Morning, everybody, and I'm hoping that you, like us on this APSCo Question Time Live, actually took a minute to think about those that have fallen working for the NHS or in the care market, whilst trying to look after us and people very specifically like us. It was pretty poignant to me that the only noise that I could hear out there was an ambulance taking somebody or bringing somebody back, whatever, but an ambulance siren taking somebody to the help of those people. And I'm sure that we all join together in thanking people and that we are sad for the losses that have happened. So it is the Tuesday, the 28th of April. We have been locked down now for a period of time. It's, you know, moving onward, this lockdown. And what we've tried to do at APSCo is put on numerous webinars and different events to try and help you lead the way. Now, there's less legislational changes. There are a couple of tweaks, but less legislational changes. What we've been doing in the last couple of weeks is inviting APSCo members, some from some of the very big companies, and others from the medium size or smaller businesses, to communicate with us as to what they are actually doing within their business and how they're responding themselves and their businesses to this corona crisis. So let me welcome, as ever, APSCo Legal Counsel, Tania Bowers, who will make a focus on answering those questions of yours with that legal or legislational bent. I want to also welcome David Gettins. David is the UK MD of Lorien. Lorien is a big and well-respected IT recruitment company, that technology space. It has both contingent workers, but also there's a big MSP following and workforce solutions offering. And David has been at Lorien for 13 years in the recruitment market, for 22 years, pretty obviously knows his stuff. Lorien is part of the very large group Impellum, and Impellum has about 3,200 staff internationally. Lorien themselves have 5,000 contractors out. So that's a big organisation. It would be great to hear his insights. We also have, and I'd like to welcome Jay Hookings. Jay, we lost you for a little while, but I'm glad that we got you back.
Yeah, right at the start. Apologies for that, a glitch.
No worries, no worries. We're all getting used to glitches, and no one's embarrassed about technical glitches anymore. It's amazing. So Shay is the founder and runs Recruit One-to-One, again in that technology space, specifically SAP. Recruit One-to-One turns over around £21 million, so a meaty business. It's been one of the fastest growing businesses in Wales and fastest growing businesses in the top 50 actually in the UK on a few occasions. Shay, with his business, has offices and setups, let's say, across some of the European countries. As I always say, in the beer drinking ones, so Belgium, the Netherlands. Weirdly, he's gone to Italy, wine drinking country, so therefore generally not a good bet, but maybe it is, as well as further afield. He's based just close to Cardiff. Welcome to my panel. Thank you for giving me some of your time today. We've got questions. What I would say to anybody who is out there, give us questions on the chat line. If you give us those questions, I will endeavour to ask all of your questions. What always happens is people don't ask questions early, and then when they ask them at the very end, we're a bit inundated and I'm not able to get all those questions answered. So if you have a question, go to the chat section of Zoom and ask those questions of our panel. I'm hoping it's okay. I'm going to kick off with the first question that we've got. Let's have a look. We've got some views on, I'm an owner director of a recruitment business. I don't qualify, we don't qualify for the job retention scheme, and I haven't accessed Sybil. Can I apply for this new bounce back loan? What are the criteria? I think that's one for Tania. You're on mute at the moment, Tania.
Thanks, Anne. Yes, this was just announced by the Chancellor last night. It's in response to arguments that the civil scheme is too difficult to access, particularly around proving that you were a viable business before COVID and that you will continue to be a viable business after COVID. It's intended to be for small companies, so micro businesses and small companies. So they're companies that have up to 50 employees, and the definition, the turnover up to £7 million. They can borrow up to 25% of turnover and can borrow between £2,000 and £50,000. It's going to open next Monday. They're telling us that cash should be available within days of application. It's a fairly straightforward application form. 12 months, interest and fee free. And the government is guaranteeing 100% of the loan to the banks. It's going to be through the normal British Business Bank process, I understand, through lenders.
So Tania, that will come through the accredited lenders that the British Business Bank accredited. So in essence, the banks. So one needs to go through the same, not quite jump through the same hoops, but go to the same people that some of us have contacted already and asked for money and been turned back. So we're going to the same people again, or is it going to be easier than that?
It's the same banks, although they have broadened the accreditation over recent weeks. So there are more banks and institutions that are able to lend the money. The intention is it's a questionnaire. There's not this requirement to send as much information in to justify the loan. It is very much about micro and small businesses remaining solvent and not going bust, and that's what it's intended to do. So it is intended to be quick to access, but we'll see.
Tania, can I ask, do we know what the interest rates are in the first year? It's going to be interest free. I know it's 100% guaranteed by the government. What kind of interest would one expect to be charged on this kind of loan?
I don't know, actually. That's certainly not been, they haven't published what the interest rate would be. I don't know whether any of the panellists have got any understanding of what the interest rates are on the CBIL application, but I don't know.
Well, I think the dilemma with the CBIL application is that the banks are pretty much making figures off, well, it seems like off the top of their heads with CBIL. And when we've been doing research with our members, only 7% of our members that have tried to access funds through the CBIL scheme have been successful. I'm wondering whether this is going to be any more successful and whether actually it's going to be cheaper than is being offered currently through a number of the CBIL schemes. Any view, Tania?
I can't comment on the interest. I mean, it is intended to be for smaller businesses, but it's really a Treasury public PR note that's has been circulated so far, so it's limited information.
Okay. Do either of our panelists, David or Shay, pretty obviously you're not going to be acceptable for this kind of scheme. Shay, because your turnover is too big, even though if you think about it from a staffing point of view, you've got 45 staff, but they're obviously doing better than the government would imagine, as it were, with a turnover of 21. And again, David, pretty obviously, Lorien and part of Impellum is a huge business, so not appropriate. Have either of your businesses, David, let me come to you first, access any of the government assistance that's been out there?
Yeah, I think it'd be fair to say that where the customer demand has gone away, clearly we've used the JRS job retention scheme and we furloughed people, but we've been very careful to look at that daily meeting in the morning and the evenings to work out where the demand is. Are we treating our people fairly? And it's tough decisions. So yes, we've accessed the furlough scheme for sure. And we're reviewing the situation daily.
Okay. Che, what about you as a slightly smaller business than this? Have you accessed any of the government schemes?
Yeah, we've looked at a whole range. There was also a few others introduced by the Welsh Government as well. So they generally do tend to align to British governments in the whole, but there's something called I think it's the Economic Resilience Fund we looked at for one of the smaller group companies. But for CBILS, we didn't qualify. We couldn't sort of evidence the revenue loss, and we also couldn't evidence the sort of refusal of the availability of other funding. But we're keeping, as David said, we're keeping a very close eye on it. And from my perspective, in the comments of the feedback from my team, we're reasonably comfortable with how the speed of that clarification, especially of late.
Okay. Would you say, Che, that you feel that the business has been hit detrimentally by the coronavirus? I mean, it seems a bit of an obvious answer I'm going to get, but if so, what kind of scale would you say?
We've taken a broad look across leading and lagging indicators, and the sort of lagging indicators around the profitability and cash flow, not as much as yet, but modeling would indicate when we look at vacancy decline and things, we've taken broadly a hit from a year-on-year comparison for April, a 65% hit in our vacancies. So it's significant. And changing weekly. So we're just keeping a very, very close eye to match those up and see what impact it has to the lagging indicators.
Okay. David, what about you with Lorien? What sort of hit would you expect that you're taking?
Well, I think as per the APSCo survey, tech actually is one of the better performing markets within the current environment. I think it'd be fair to say that it is changing daily. So a customer in the morning will make a really strong, drastic decision, say that all hiring on hold, and then in the afternoon something else has changed, or the legislation's changed, or they've got a new idea. What we're having to do is stay really close to our customers, monitor the activity, be agile for them. In terms of number of vacancies, clearly they have decreased. There's no bones about it. Interestingly, contract recruitment, not as much. Permanent, I think still some of our clients are getting their head around onboarding. We've invested heavily in tech so we can video interview, and we've got some products that are serving us well, so the investment is paying dividends. But there's still a point there that is someone going to make a 50, 60, 70, 80, 100k hire without seeing them face to face, unless they've done it before. So we've got customers that are really keen, they can do everything remotely, laptops get delivered to home addresses, workstation gets set up at home, no problem at all. For some other customers, that's a big change. And I think it will change in the future, but full circle, yes, vacancies have gone down, not as much in contract, but certainly perm vacancies as a bit of indecision starts to creep in.
Yeah, look, we know that we are in the recruitment market a bit of a bellwether for the whole of the economy. And what we do tend to see is, with any concern out there, is the permanent requirements that just get paused. Let's hope they're not turned off totally, they're just being paused. But contract is the one, because of the agility of having contractors, it allows your business to move quickly and make quick decisions to switch on and then switch off that kind of resource. So you can see how that might well happen. Yeah. So yeah, I can imagine it. Okay, I've got some questions about furloughing. I know both of you have looked at that. Let me come to Tania, if that's okay, about the legal side of things. Here's one of a few questions on furloughing. An interesting one, which we haven't had. One of my team has said that they want to be put on furlough because they find working at home too stressful. Can they insist on being furloughed? Tania, I've never had that question.
No, it's a new one. No, it is an employer's decision to decide whether or not they have work for the employee, or whether the work's decreased to such an extent because of COVID that they don't have work, and thus they would be put on furlough. So no, they can't insist, it's not a right. However, it is as an employer, you obviously do need to work with an employee to facilitate their working from home And if they do have, for example, small children, or if they do live in a very, very busy household where they don't have access to the equipment they need, then perhaps there is a way of looking at different working hours or distributing work within the team. Or, for example, I suppose you can on and off people on furlough, 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off. So you could look at ways of redistributing work to take the stress off of that individual.
I do understand, because at APSCo we furloughed a few people, and obviously have other people working from home. I remember that we sent out, and our HR person had a look at the sort of health and safety issues of people working at home. Do you remember, Tania, what are the kind of things you need to look at from a health and safety point of view with somebody working from home?
Well, there's the practical issues of, do they have a desk, or do they rather have a chair and a table, whether they can work comfortably, are they able to take breaks, does their systems work? So I guess there's the practical issues, but then there's the more mental health issues, I suppose, and that's about trying to look deeper into what might prevent them being able to work effectively at home, or what they're finding stressful, to try and alleviate that.
Yeah,
which you might not find from a straightforward questionnaire.
Okay, let me come to you again. Can I insist on furloughed workers taking holiday whilst on furlough?
Right, yes, holiday has long been an issue with furlough, even though it's only been a few weeks. We are, just to let everyone know, we are expecting I can say with certainty that we're expecting guidance on holiday and furlough probably by the end of the week or the beginning of next week. It will cover both if holiday accrues during furlough, how it accrues, and how leave can be taken during furlough. Yes, employers can require workers to take holiday during furlough as long as they comply with their contract, which says they have to give at least double the notice of the period to be taken. So if you want someone to take 1 week's holiday, you need to give them 2 weeks notice.
Yeah, my understanding is if you want them to take 1 day's holiday, it starts off with a week's notice, doesn't it?
Possibly. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure.
So in essence, we can ask people to take holiday, but only in accordance with their contract, and we need to give them enough notice so that they can do that. David, where you will have got some people on furlough, would you expect them to take holiday? What's the Lorien view?
Yeah, I think we would. I'd echo the other panelists' view on this. Adhere to their contract. Some of them already have holiday, but I'd go back to some of the mental health things. We can't have people working. They may have started in Jan, holiday year starts in Jan, not had any holiday yet. If they're not going to take any holiday till June, then I would argue that's not fit and healthy for them. So they do need to take a rest, take a break. So we would encourage that for their own mental health as well. But yeah, people within Lorien will be taking holiday. Some have actually reached out and said, I definitely want to take that week I booked, David, because I need a break. So we take that into consideration. I think it goes back to, I think the other panelists will agree, it's about staying close to your people, having those conversations if they need a break, being flexible. And we're all having to learn a new level of flexibility here. And new ways of working. So for us, our people make a difference. And for me, it's staying close to the people, making sure that they're fit and well. We're fighting fit as a business. So when we come out of this, and yeah, for the first 6 months, people need to make sure they've taken the right amount of holiday. And we'll be flexible on that. But at the same time, it's keeping people fit and well, and us looking after our own people. Yeah.
Che, what are you doing with regard to people taking holiday, either whilst they're working from home or if they've been furloughed?
We're right at the start of that understanding, really. I mean, we've got a team of 45, so we're smaller and probably more, a little bit sort of more nimble, but we're we're looking at all the options, and we're fortunate in being able to take a lot of these unknown scenarios or challenges to the team. You know, everyone understands that, you know, building up a large amount of holidays to be able to use when the business is in its optimal time for recovery, when things return to some normality, will be a real struggle for the business. So we're being open with some of the options that the government are putting on the table. I think there's a 2-year carryover that's in discussion, I think, Tania. So we're sort of kicking those around, floating them on some of the conversation platforms and testing their temperature. And invariably, it'll probably be a balance of applying, you know, the various options available.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, let me get to my next question, which is it's for the panel here. Any tips from the panel in keeping furloughed workers motivated? David, I know that, as you said, your staff are the difference at Lorien. What are you doing with any of them that have been furloughed to keep them part of the team and motivated?
Yeah, so we've empowered our people. So a lot of the team leaders and managers outside of working hours are doing social events. And whilst people are not allowed to do productive work if they're on furlough, and we're really strict on that, it doesn't mean that they still can't be part of the Lorien family. They are still employed by us. So we've been big advocates. I think we've seen a flurry of online quizzes, cocktail nights, drinks nights, and they are absolutely part of that. And I personally, everyone that's furloughed, I'm giving a weekly call to, because it's important. They're still part of our organisation, and we need to keep them engaged as a business. So I'm personally giving everyone a call to making sure that they're okay. It's tough for sure, but they're the type of things we're doing. I think it'd be fair to say that in general, diaries are now booked out from morning to the afternoon, with call after call after call, and that's taking the place of those little chats you would have at a coffee cart, or you would have in the kitchen, or on the way to work in the lift. So you're really having to be disciplined about making sure you're reaching out and having those conversations with people. So that's what we're doing.
Yeah. Che, what are you doing? Do you have anybody that's actually furloughed in the business?
Yes, we do. About 25% furloughed. So I think it's 10 or 11 people. And it was very interesting, because the perceptional view for either, if you are the person being furloughed or the one remaining sort of in the business doing the work, you've got sort of interesting views on both of those. And I think the challenge is making sure that the person who is furloughed understands that they are as an essential part of the overall solution as the person working in that business. And it's additionally, the person working in the business is try to work through, well, I'm taking on probably additional responsibilities as well. And it's how do you sort of manage that mix? And again, transparency and openness, and using all of the tools available to you, as well as David. Yeah, highly echo what you said about my day is spent speaking to everyone sort of constantly, and it's really enjoyable as well. Sometimes you get to spend time with people that you may not have otherwise spent quite so much one-to-one time with.
Yeah. Okay, Tania, let me come to another question on furloughing, and then we're going to move away from it for a while. When the furlough scheme ends, if we still don't have enough activity to keep everyone employed, can I still make redundancies? Pretty obviously, the job retention scheme is really set up about retaining jobs. But what if, when we do get back, we simply cannot retain all of those jobs? Can I make those people redundant?
The short answer is yes, as long as you follow the law follow your contract and follow the law to make sure it's a fair dismissal. Then if there is not work, if the role no longer exists, or roles no longer exist at the end of the job retention scheme, then yes, you can make redundancies. Obviously, this is a huge dilemma for the government as to determining when they should stop the job retention scheme, whether they should move it to only be allowable by certain sectors, for example, hospitality. that is clearly going to open later than other businesses. But it's a huge dilemma for the government that they spend all this money and then at the end of it, there's still huge numbers of redundancies.
Okay, but I think the big thing then is, if I hear correctly, that if you are going to make people redundant, you need to adhere to the law on how to do that appropriately.
Yes.
And really, it's about making the role redundant, isn't it, rather than that individual?
It's the role. And actually, for larger businesses who have to follow huge consultation processes, that's one of the main reasons why the government sort of very quickly announced an extension of the job retention scheme, because there's a 45-day consultation period. So that's unlikely to affect most APSCo members who won't be big enough. But nonetheless, it highlights the point that large business was having to immediately consider redundancies if the job retention scheme had finished at the end of May, as it was originally intended to.
Yeah. Do you think, let me ask the other two members of the panel, David, do you think that you would have had to have looked at redundancies if furloughing hadn't been introduced by the government?
I think that's a really tough question, Anne. I think who knows in terms of the volumes. What I can commit to is that we would have treated everyone fairly and absolutely followed, to echo your point, we would have followed our internal policies, the law, and looked after everyone. But I think it would be really difficult to comment on that. What I can say is that clearly, on the outcome of this, there's going to be some of our clients that are going to be absolutely thriving because their strategy is on point, and they're in tech and people are going to buy more tech. There's some businesses are going to be in a different shape. And for us, it's which ones of those businesses are in our portfolio at the moment. And that's what will drive our decisions. But I'm still super optimistic and certainly being in the tech space, I can see nothing but future investment increasing significantly between now and the end of the year and on to 2021.
Yeah. Che, would you have, as a business, had to have considered redundancies if the job retention scheme weren't introduced by the government? I mean, was it worth the government doing that, do we think?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I mean, I reflect a lot back on mistakes I made during the 2008 2009 financial crash. And I've done a lot of research at the opening, sort of when we realized the impact that Corona was going to have around me specifically, what was our communications and what was our messaging at the time. And one of the resounding ones is sort of act decisively and act quickly. And I fear that I didn't do that in 2008, 2009. So despite having a robust order book and sort of good cash flow runway, I think we would have been prompted to do so by a keenness to be decisive and be quick, because we don't know how long it's going to last or how deep it's going to go.
I mean, I wonder if realistically the Chancellor hadn't suggested this relatively early on, that a number of businesses in our sector would have done what businesses are doing globally, really, is in essence that the kind of equivalent to stockpiling toilet rolls would have been to quickly chop anything that could be chopped in a way that we've all made a big grab for cash and, you know, whatever. And that we would have done that. And I think that actually suggesting this job retention scheme and calling it that actually very early on focused the mind that there was an alternative that we could go for. Yeah. That meant that we didn't need to make a quick decision about what to do. It gave us time to have a look to see how long it was going to last. Obviously, we don't know still, but to give us that time to sit back. How deep would cuts need to be and how long would this scenario last? So yeah, I think, I'd like to think it's been a good thing, Che.
Sorry, Anne. Yeah, I also think it's helped with the messaging to your teams as well. You know, there is a scheme to help retain that, and the very wording of a job retention scheme. And I think the wording related to my earlier point on furloughing, you know, we call them absent friends at the moment. It's very important, but the whole messaging behind it is exactly that. It's there to give you time to breathe and help you retain jobs, whereas otherwise you would be almost, definitely having to make tough calls.
Yeah, we call them, well, it's a term that's a bit like lucky devils, but the last term of that is slightly different, but I won't repeat it at APSCo, because those of us that are working are kind of doing the job of a lot of extra people and finding it quite tough. But anyway, so we've done that to make sure that the messaging is absolutely right with regard to that. Let me come on to some more questions. So I've got an interesting one here, Tania, and it comes to you. The House of Lords, we haven't heard much from them lately, published a report only yesterday on IR35, that old chestnut. Will it go ahead in April 21 or not? I mean, it was good that there was a year's delay. Even some of the bigger companies had got themselves well prepared for it. But the reality is, thank goodness we're not having to deal with that simultaneous to the coronavirus crisis. Is it going to go ahead, do we think? What did they say at the House of Lords yesterday?
Well, firstly, it's probably worth saying HMRC and HMT's position, because we had a meeting of the IR35 forum last week.
And can you explain to listeners here, what is APSCo's position with the IR35 forum? What's our involvement?
So we are the sort of co-chair of the forum, the sort of lay chair that's not associated with government in the forum, and it meets, I think, once every 2 months.
Yeah. So we've been pretty heavily involved on IR35 all the way along, haven't we? I mean, in fact, APSCo was created 20 years ago because of IR35 being mooted in the first place. So we're still involved. So what happened yesterday at the House of Lords?
So last Friday, we were told that, yes, there's the intention for it to go ahead next year. It was pulled from the finance bill, which caused, you know, a bit of a ruffle amongst commentators, but that was because of procedural issues, they're saying, because Parliament's remote, so it's setting up how to debate amendments. But as far as they're concerned, currently it's going ahead. However, the House of Lords yesterday afternoon published a report. They actually looked at IR35 right from the beginning. It was a very detailed assessment of the whole 20 years of the process, and in particular the public sector changes. They were pretty damning. They never anticipated that the delays that the delay would take place. So actually the report probably now carries far more weight than if the reform had gone ahead in April and it was a fait accompli, so to speak. But they were pretty damning of government and the lack of coordination between employment rights, which is overseen by BAYS, and tax status, employment for tax, which is overseen by HMRC and HMT. They said effectively that contractors inside IR35 are zero rights employees, so they're tax-like employees, but they have no rights, which is the situation at the moment, and I know government is concerned about that. They were quite damning about CEST tool, that people don't feel that they can trust it. They were quite damning about the fact the government didn't really take a detailed account of the public sector reforms and just ploughed ahead regardless with the private sector reforms. And actually they used the phrase that the private sector's large and medium-sized businesses are the government's tax collector. They're basically doing the work of the government. Privatising tax compliance is a quote from their report. So it was pretty damning. They said they should look again at the Taylor Review recommendations, which was the employment status for tax and for rights should be dealt with together, shouldn't be kept separate. But in the meantime, they said they should actually look again at some of the far more simpler solutions that were proposed back in 2015, 2016, and HMRC largely disregarded, such as a flat contractor rate on tax on using contractors as one example, or a withholding tax like CIS. So it's very hard to know what impact in the long run this report will have. However, government will read it, and I think they will take it seriously. and it may be influential in their thinking. And the report finished with saying government really should keep business aware of their thinking, and if it is going to go live or if it is going to be delayed further, then they really must tell people by October 2020, so that business doesn't have this added burden of having to like rev up again for changes that may be amended last minute, etc., which is the history of IR35, as we all know.
Yeah, thank you. David, as a big contract business, Lorien, and then obviously the group in Pelham, did you as a business get ready for IR35 in the private sector to sort of come into effect?
Absolutely, Anne. So I would say of our top 10 clients, the large contractor users, they actually looked at a date of around February 28th as their cut-over date, which is, I think people will be aware, is consistent in the market. One of my clients actually said, look, we're doing this from January, we're going to do a policy change from the beginning of Jan, which is their concern. We were prepared for that. And I think, is this where I put my hands on my head? We invested significantly, staff, resource, time, effort, to be compliant with what the government requested. We've probably been engaging with our clients through our QBRs or our one-to-ones or just at our workshops we were running for probably 18 months before that, all at significant cost and investment. And then right at the last minute, I remember when I saw it in the news, I was like, are you joking? Because, and regardless of the decision, that would be my opinion, whether it's the right one or not, it's more the wasted effort. But I think we were ready to go. We are compliant, but we were going to be well ahead of the curve, really pleased with ourselves. And then we had to do a lot of work very quickly, reverse engineering stuff. And you can imagine, as you said, 5,000 contractors, a lot of systems changes. I mean, one of our probably a typical client challenge was that rather the policy change or the process, it was system changes. Yeah. So that takes time and effort. So I absolutely, I think everyone would share that we wasted a lot of time and effort, which was very frustrating, but it will come again. I think, again, this is my personal opinion. If the government are making £330 billion available to the economy to get us through COVID-19, I think it will sharpen their focus about their tax collection. And that's my fear. But the vast majority of our clients are now ready. We've got the processes in place. So it's not all wasted. But it will come round again, probably around January next year, and we'll all have to pick up and dust off those folders and collect all the data again, and we'll go from there. And we'll listen out for what APSCo can help us with and support us with, and it's very much appreciated your lobbying, what you do.
Thank you. Che, as a different type of business to Lorien, what did Recruit One-to-One get ready? How much work did you need to put into it, and did you feel relieved when it was delayed for a year, or were you fairly frustrated?
We diverted the efforts of the sort of Brexit dropout team that was sort of rediverted to, pull out workflows, and spent a lot of time, sticking up sticky notes and redrafting how we do things and system changes. Exactly the same as David said. The longer notice would be essential, and I think to have a better idea, as Tania mentioned there, to say, right, by October, to give us a 6-7 month window to say, right, it's on or it's not on, is essential. Just that lack of uncertainty, we found in particular that customers didn't take it seriously, and in particular the obligation for European customers to give a determination where they weren't bound to any legislation for the collecting, and we just struggled to get the answers. Some of the European customers hadn't even heard of IR35. They have similar, deemed employment things across Europe, but yeah, it was very difficult. So advanced notification would be key, and yet remember where we stored all those files in, David, to dig the notes back out again.
Yeah, well, fair enough. Okay, let's go to some other questions. I'm an owner director of a recruitment business, and I don't qualify for the job retention scheme, and I haven't accessed CBIL. Can I apply for this new bounce back loan? Well, that's back to the criteria then, realistically, isn't it, Tania?
Yes, so owner director, they're likely to be a micro business or they're likely to be a small business. So yes, I would say they can apply for the bounce back loan. I've already gone through the criteria. What I can say is some of our panelists, thank you very much, have told us about the rates. So the CBIL rate's 3.99 to about 4.75%. And as regards the new loan, then the government are working with lenders to agree a low rate of interest for the remaining period of loan. So sorry, 3.99 to 4.75 over base.
Over base rate.
Of course, base is very low at the moment.
Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you for that. Let me come to some other questions. Do you include, it's a good one actually, do you include temp workers when discussing number of employees for the bounce back loan? So if you have PAYE temps on your payroll, do you include those if you can have up to 50 employees?
This goes back to employment status, tax and rights, because sometimes they are treated as employees because they are employees for tax. So that's the apprenticeship levy and SSP. I would say for this, they're not employees as such. So no, I don't think that would prevent you applying for the bounce back loan if you have more temp workers.
Okay, I've got a question. Key information document processes were supposed to be implemented in April. We have decided that this is a low priority right now. What's the general recruitment community doing? Tania, can I just ask to explain key information documents processes, please?
So the key information document is a document that should be sent to candidates when they register with you for work finding services. It effectively explains to them how they can provide their services to you rather, and a pay rate down to net pay deductions. So it's for clarity. It's an amendment to the conduct regs. It did come into force on the 6th of April. The employment agency standards have said they are not looking to target people about non-compliance. They're looking to educate and assist people with becoming compliant, but it is live and it is a statutory obligation. I don't know what of our population of members aren't complying. I think for most of them, they work through they will supply workers through umbrella companies. So I suggest that this person does actually talk to their umbrella companies they work with to get example kids from them. And then if they have a PAYE one, they will need to produce their own as well. But actually, I suspect that it will be less problematic than they think to start to comply. They might have problems with not being able to automate it that easily, but I think what government will want them to be able to demonstrate is they have done their best in the circumstances to comply with the law.
Okay, I'm choosing not to ask our two panel members, unless they want to volunteer, whether they are complying with this. It seems a bit of a tough one. So I'm choosing not to, if that's the right decision, to ask particularly whether our panel members are complying. Sorry, David, I didn't hear you.
Yeah, I was going to say, we're there. 6th of April, we automated it. It was a bit of a challenge because we had, as Jay said, Brexit, IR35, non-IR35, kid document, and now we do COVID. So this year will be, I'll be glad to see it behind us. But yeah, bit of work, automation. I think, again, for the members, it's not too tricky. Get a standard template up, make sure it goes out when it should, have an audit trail, job's done.
Okay. A question for you, a different one on furloughing though, Tania. Will APSCo be lobbying to extend the furlough measures to the recruitment industry beyond the end of June? What's your view? Are we going to carry on with the furloughing stuff? We were involved in the first instance. Are we going to lobby to extend them, or do we think the government are likely to do that anyway?
I think we will be talking to government about extending it fairly shortly. I think we are all waiting to get more information from the government about how people are going to start to get back to normal and what sectors of industry are going to get back to normality first. But yeah, I anticipate we will be lobbying for that.
I do too. We're part of that process, so I'm sure we will continue to do that. Let me come to a question with regard to Brexit. It's been mentioned a couple of times, and I would certainly say for the last month, most people have been able, for the first time in a very long time, to sort of forget Brexit, really. But it is there and it is looming. What are the kind of plans, Che, that you've made for Recruit One-to-One from a Brexit planning point of view? And has the COVID scenario changed any of those plans?
You're right. They sort of put them to the back of your mind. And on a completely different topic, I was speaking to a friend of mine who's procurement within health supplies, and he said that Brexit actually had some positive impact, and that some of the stockpiles enabled us to have more equipment than we may otherwise would have had, which was a really interesting viewpoint. I think it's delayed us. It's made us more, the sentiment around Brexit has made us more convinced that there's going to be an agreed and sort of planned departure. So the main planning we were doing was around disaster, a fallout, without an agreement in place, which I think is, I'm more comfortable is not going to happen. So we've really kicked it down the path, and the most imminent and critical decisions are around coping with the business environment now, planning across 4 key areas, keeping our key relationships safe, looking at different ways of taking our business model to market, keep looking after the well-being of our people, and operationally being effective. So Brexit for the moment is a tomorrow thought, rightly or wrongly.
Okay. David, what about Lorien? What have you been making plans anyway from a Brexit point of view?
Yeah, we had, and I think Lorien benefit from being part of the wider Impediment Group, which is a global business. So we've got people and resources aligned to that activity. I think talking from a Lorien perspective, we have offices in Frankfurt that are relatively new, but mainly UK-centric business. So to Che's point, it's further down the priority list at the moment, and it goes back to, at the moment, things are changing daily. For us, the highest priority is to be agile and make those changes in the moment. And as you guys alluded to earlier on one of the other questions, it's about being decisive and agile, really. So Brexit's probably one of the topics will come back up again later on during the year, but for now it's COVID's taken the highlights, and that's where we are.
Yeah, there's been a few different questions looking at the future, and I think it's worth us just sort of stepping to look at what's going on. One of the questions here is saying that a lot of thought leaders out there saying that we need to pivot our propositions, get people to do something different, really. Whether it's perm trying contract, whether it's construction trying technology, or whatever else it may be. So some of the thought leaders are saying, change up what you've been doing. As businesses, David, do you feel that you're going to have a market from tech coming back? Or are you looking at making huge whole-scale changes to what Lorien as a business looks like the other side of this? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think probably 2 buckets there. In terms of the market, we've got to respond to the market. And for me, from speaking to the CEOs that I deal with, the CIOs that I deal with, top 3 in their strategic objectives will include a tech play. And if it doesn't, it will do moving forward. Investment they've made in digital transformations and technology in the past will increase for sure. We're seeing that. And that's not just tech companies, by the way. And anecdotally, if you look at the local restaurants near you, those that have an app and those that have part of Just Eat, Deliveroo, those sort of guys, they're okay at the moment. The guys that didn't invest in a website or an app are now having to catch up and behind the curve. And that, I think that is a real good analogy for lots of our customers. And clearly there's going to be customers that we've got and Jay's got that are not going to be in the same shape as they are or they were. I've got some other customers that are making hay while the sun shines. So for us, it's about aligning with the customers that are on point in terms of our strategy, which is technology at scale, making sure we deliver on our promises for what we've made to those customers, and staying close. But for us, I don't see, we set our strategy, which is tech only. We back the right horse on this occasion, and we will continue on that vein. I think there is a play that says, will companies just now provide contract, temp and perm? No, I think what we're seeing is clients are talking to us about everything from early talent to senior hire within a vertical. So I do think there's some merit to that, because I personally, and certainly in terms of Impellum Group, specialist brands are the key for me. Expert to expert conversations, understanding the client needs, and then delivering against those is really key for us, and that underpins our strategy. So for us, no, I think tech's the place to be. It's not that easy. However, for us, I firmly believe, I'm super optimistic that this will just underpin more and more investment in technology and digital transformation in 2021.
Okay, Che, obviously you are at one-to-one also in that tech space, specifically SAP. So, and I agree with David, the tech space is pretty much, I'm from that background myself, obviously a long time ago now, but that's my background. And it's always been the place to play, really. But are you looking at changing anything else? Are you looking at new markets? Are you looking at people doing different roles within the business? Or are you looking at how you might shake things up for the business?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're looking at, in the interim, with a sort of a diminished crew, if you like, with some people on furlough, you're trying to sort of one person doing maybe more than one sector, or perm dipping into contract. We work with a delivery team model, so you've got the client side and the candidate side, so there's a bit more of a blend in what they do. There's a little bit of a sway towards activity specialization, whereby one people may be better at generating opportunity, whereby another's better at account management, whereas another's better at sourcing the candidates. So we're looking at a few of those areas. But one really exciting one organizationally for me is it's like the industrial revolution for flexible working. You know, everyone had this barrier, and we were pushing in this direction anyway, but I think there was a barrier to this real freedom. And I think all of a sudden now everyone is, despite I know the economic climate's tough and everyone's working harder, but everyone can work, everyone can do stuff like this, you know, and I think it will never go quite back to normal, and rightly so. The available of new talent and people that you would be able to sort of engage that you wouldn't be able to work with otherwise, I think is really exciting.
So let me then ask you a question, and then David, I'm going to come back to you briefly. What's the new normal going to look like for Recruit One-to-One? What would the difference be, do you think? If you could pick one, what would it be?
Choice about, we looked at a where you work, when you work, how you work policy. We had the when you work pretty nailed. This is the where you work tick. I don't think it matters.
Okay, an interesting one. So less of a need for people to be present, less presentism, which, you know, I've been in the recruitment market for 30 odd years, and there was always whoever turned up first, even if they were eating their bacon sandwich at 8:30, generally impressed the bosses because they were at least there. David, what would be the difference if you look at Lorien post COVID-19? What would the difference be? You're on mute, matey. Still on mute.
Sorry.
No worries.
Sorry. The truth is, we just don't know at the moment. What we are doing is we've got work groups and people talking about what it could look like, imagining the future. What is for sure, especially as being such a large business, we're going to have obligations to our staff and our team members, our colleagues. We're going to have challenges around the workspace, health and safety, not even thinking about audits, GDPR, people working from home. How can we help them keep a a clean and safe and protected office environment. And then we've got performance management. We've got the other thing that I think, while we're not fully working from home forever, is we've got lots and lots of really great stories at Lorien about long tenure, where we've grown our own talent. And retaining our good people is actually one of our strategic objectives. So how do I performance management coach people if we're not sitting next to them? So there's a challenge for me there. How can we create an environment where we can do distance engagement with our new talent coming through? So you're absolutely right. How do we overcome where we have teams of people and they learn off each other, and people are coaching as well as all our online and virtual training that we deliver? So they're the things we're kicking about at the moment. And it is a tough one, and we haven't got all the answers yet, but we're working on it. For me, I think it would be a balance. My personal opinion, I think we will go to smaller real estate and office space, working spaces like we work, so office, meeting rooms, couple of offices, and in small groups and hubs of people, working, learning together. And then we'll invest more time in the collaborative tools. But one of my clients actually said to me that they won't be moving to any home working after this, because their CEO and their FTSE 100 company is a massive advocate of collaboration. And they believe collaboration starts working together in human contact, which is a challenge for COVID-19. I'll give them that. But I see some merit in that. So we've got to work together. We're working on it now, but paramount to that is, how do we get people back to work safely, to and from, in the working environment, and remain productive? So for all the members at APSCo, large, small, medium, micro businesses, we're all in the same situation, and we've got to work it out and do what we can to get these people back to work.
I think the good thing is that we're all asking the questions. Some of us worked out for their businesses what solutions are. They may change depending on how long this goes. And others that perhaps never really looked at those as questions to be asked are analysing their business, analysing the way that they do work. And there will be differences, I think, when we come out. Let me close this session off. I want to thank our panel members. These sessions always go quicker than I think they're going to. And I want to thank Tania Bowers, who's our legal counsel at APSCo, for doing these kind of sessions, but for all the work that she and her team with the legal helpline that reports in to Tania, which has been hugely busy, as you can imagine, as well as the lobbying and everything that we've done. I want to thank David Gettins from Lorien, a big company, a founder member of APSCo, helped us set up in 99. And been a long, loyal member, and looking at changes within that business to see what it's going to come out at. And Hookings from Recruit 1-to-1, again, a great member of APSCo, where both of these businesses have been very open, and I really appreciate that, and I'm sure that the rest of our audience appreciate it too. Can I just say that APSCo have fantastic webinars on this week. There is one at 2 o'clock this afternoon, another one on Thursday at 2 o'clock. Have a look at the daily bulletin that's been going out, as you can imagine, every day, and it will detail those. But don't forget to come and look and to listen at what's going on out there within the marketplace, and some really strong ideas on how to make sure your people working at home are working in a great environment, and that they are ready to come back to you in a fit state when that time comes. Thank you to everybody. I will always stay safe. And again, referring back to us an hour ago, thank you to all of those in the NHS and in the care market for looking after all of us, even at the expense of themselves. Thank you again. Goodbye.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.